Gentlemen, good afternoon all, and let me thank you all for attending this meet and greet. And this will not be the first and last occasion that we will be doing this. We're hoping that this will be a constant activity in which we are attempting to reach out to PBC past students in the diaspora. We do have a very wide cross section of PBC past students across the diaspora, and the diaspora for us here does not only mean Brooklyn, New York. I'm located in Washington, D.C., and we have a representation in Canada. We have representation from the West Coast. We have a lot of active PBC fellows in Texas, in the state of Texas. So there are PBC past students across the spectrum who are doing great things for themselves. And we just want to use this opportunity and use occasions like this to really introduce the diaspora to the PBC Alumni Association of New York. It is not an alumni association that is strictly based in New York, strictly working in New York. We are a registered 501c3 organization that allows us to reach out to all PBC past students across the United States and in North America, so that we want to be able to have that active engagement with you, especially in this year of our 75th anniversary. As we know, PBC is celebrating 75 years this year. And one of the goals coming out of this 75th anniversary celebration is legacy building. But how do you build legacy? You build legacy by building capacity. And you build legacy by encouraging participation from past students. Ultimately, we want to continue to build community as past students. We ought not to only gather when someone dies or when someone is sick that we remember them. We always want to have that sense of community so that we can remember and recognize what PBC has done for us. And at this time, I wish to invite Mr. Alain Alexander. Alain is the treasurer of the PBC Alumni Association, and he's going to give us a summary of the work of the association with respect to the dollars and cents in what we have been able to contribute over the years. So Alain, I will turn it over to you.
Hey, are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, but I thought I was muted before. So first thing, let me just introduce myself first of all. My name's Alain Alexander. I'm from Victoria, St. Mark. I currently live in Brooklyn, New York City. I graduated from PBC back in 1994, and currently here in New York, I work as a senior director of finance for an educational software company. A little bit more about myself. I enjoy riding my bike on weekends. I typically tend to ride like 20, 30 miles, either on a Saturday or Sunday. I also play steel pan, and for those of you probably who I think I see a couple friends here as well. I run a music production / recording, mixing and mastering studio here in New York City as well. It goes by the name of Top Notch Audio. And as Kellen said, I'm currently the treasurer of PBC Alumni Association New York. Before I get into the next part of my presentation, I just want to start by saying that I'm standing on the shoulders of what I would call, I want to choose the words very carefully. I would say a very elite group of members / mentors who laid the foundation for our alumni association here in New York City. And anyway, let me get started because I tend to talk a lot, but I'll try my very best to be as quick as possible here. And so let me just move this out of the way. So I'm going to try to break up my part into 3 different pieces. The what, the hows, and the whys. And typically, a treasurer would present a lot of numbers, but I want to take a slightly different slant here today. And I'm going to start with a what. So what did PBC Alumni Association accomplish over the years? I think for those of you who probably came in a little bit late, Kellen was playing a video earlier on where Eric Holder, one of our members and past president, where he explained that we had at the start of the millennium back in 2001, PBC was growing and we needed more space. So we needed to have more classrooms. And so the Alumni Association provided financial assistance to build that new wing that's on the top of the top of the school, right next to the cemetery. So this was the first major project that the PBC Alumni Association did. It cost somewhere around 80,000 EC dollars, which Eric said earlier on, we paid over several years. Continuing with what? After we laid the foundation of the building, of course, we needed to equip the building with different, different facilities to enhance the student learning. And to accomplish that, one of the second major projects we did was to install a school intercom system. Why was this so important? Back in my time, while I was in PBC, we had Brother DeLettis, and he would walk around with what the US people call a bullhorn. Back in Grenada, we call it something else. It's also known as a megaphone. So he would walk around with this thing, "Hey, Elaine, get back in the classroom," and things like that. But with the current school intercom system, as you guys would guess, the principal can sit in the office, and if there are any announcements that you need to make, there's no reason to walk around the school anymore or to go and stand at the top of the stairs where you typically have assembly. We can also move on to sports, where, as Eric also spoke about earlier on, we donated cricket gear, bats, pads, helmets, soccer uniforms, balls. For athletics, we did uniforms and what's known as spikes to the students. We also contributed significantly to culture. We outfitted the PBC band with new musical instruments. And as we all know, the PBC choir is renowned throughout the island. And without the musical instruments, we probably won't have a choir. One of the highlights for today's meeting, which I'll speak a little bit on more towards the end of my presentation, is Kellen also spoke about it earlier on in one of the videos he played. We established the PBC Scholarship Fund in 2018. And between 2018 and 2022, we donated $25,000 to PBC in Grenada. So that's, equivalent to about 5,000 US a year, which is, as you guys know, is very, very notable because there are not many. Let me take a step back. There are not many Grenadian organizations I know who donate, first of all, this type of funds back to institutions in Grenada. Second question is how? How did we do it? When I first joined the PBC Alumni Association back in 2005, 6, thereabouts, we had annual events. And first of all, there was a bus ride to Atlantic City in around April. During the summer, there was a boat ride. We also had an annual backyard barbecue as well, and the year-end gala. For me, the most favorite part of it for me was the year-end gala because that's when I get to put on my fancy suit. I typically don't dress in all these fancy suits all through the year, like Kellen and those guys. So it's a time where I could actually, try to show off a little bit and say, hey, you guys can do it, I can do it too, right? But anyway, we also had private donations from members and friends of the Alumni Association. Additionally, we also had employer matching donations. It may not be something that happens in Grenada too often, but here in the US, a lot of times, a lot of companies, especially the larger companies, tend to have a program that if an employee donates $100, they may match 50% or they may match the full 100% of that donation. So we also receive a lot of donations that way. I'm going to move on. So you can see from this slide here that, and this is not just only in the past 2 years because of COVID. Preferences with people here in the New York City area changed a lot. And so we started having dwindling attendees to some of these events, which is also related to part of this meeting as well, because number one, members is part of it. We need to have a lot more members to generate more people in those events. So what can we do going forward, all right? So going forward, we can continue to have private donations from members and friends of PBC alumni. We can also continue to have employee matching donations, but we need your support. And you may also ask the question, why we need your support? It's quite evident. Last night, I think no matter where in the world Grenadians are located, you would have heard the sound of that bell. And that bell was rung by a past PBC student. And his opposition, as we spoke about earlier, is also a past PBC student from my year. And we have on this call, we have panelists who are innovators as well. I have friends in Grenada, surprisingly, who are also serious investors and who do this as, as a full-time day job in Grenada. I have friends who are involved in what I like to call food security. Some people may say farming, but I tend to like this word a lot more. We have engineers, teachers, and many on this call, many of the older members of the Alumni Association. They're great mentors to myself and to others. And the list could go on and on. So I would not stop here. But why? One of the main reasons is we need to inspire future generations of young men, right? Who can lead not just Grenada, but who can lead, lead companies, lead the world. And our current scholarship fund, while it's only for PBC students in Grenada, one of the members, I think in one of the recent meetings we had, we sort of discussed, why should we limit the scholarship to only PBC attendees? Maybe at some time in the future, not this year, obviously, maybe not next year. But at some point in time, we should be able to provide scholarships for students who want to go to universities. And the only way you can do this is by getting support from past students and friends. And go back to the question, how can we donate to PBC? So right now, everyone on this call, we can donate using Zelle if you're here in the US. If you're not here in the US and you don't like using Zelle for whatever reason, you can donate using a credit card. On our website, it's set up so you can do it via PayPal or credit and debit cards. And this is sort of like a small view of the website. And there's a donate button here. Once you click on the donate button, it takes you to a separate page. And you can do a $100 monthly donation. Or if not, you can make a one-time donation as well. But anyway, I think I've spoken for way too long. So I'm going to hand this back to Kellen right now. Thanks a lot.
At this time, I wish to welcome the first presenter, Mr. Hotway Campbell. He's a proud PBC past student of the class of 2001. He's an experienced project development engineer with a demonstrated history of working in the machinery industry. He has a strong engineering professional skills in business alignment, petroleum management, continuous improvement, software, electrical and electronic hardware, specifications development, and research. He has a passion for podcasting, as I just found out, and is the host of the podcast Life Trap. Life Trap is all about decompressing the pressures within our environments in the world, how they influence us and limit us without understanding. And so at this point, I wish to welcome Mr. Campbell to address us.
Thank you, Kellen. Good afternoon to everyone on the call today. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me well.
Yes.
All right. Okay. I'm actually intrigued by some of the guys that have way more experience in this lifetime than we do. So definitely, I'm hoping for future calls, we can hear from more of those guys that have an infinite amount of experience. Some even went to school with my dad quite a few years ago, so it would be quite interesting to hear from them. Thank you for the introduction, and again, happy Sunday to everyone on the call. When you approached me, I was I felt very privileged to have the opportunity to share at least my angle from the tech community. STEM really means a lot to me. In fact, I would say it is really one of those areas that can have a profound impact on one's life, regardless of your background, regardless of your method of learning. When you asked me about this and you came to me and you talked about how the role of PBC, I think that was the first topic, how the role of PBC in influencing your career path. It certainly did. PBC was where I was introduced to nerds, so to speak, not at the primary school level. I knew gamers at primary school, but when I got to PBC, that's where you found people that, you know, were digging in. At that time, we had a new lab, we had computers, we had Mr. Nurse, who was at the time our resident teacher for IT. And that's where I truly fell in love with, you know, computers. I didn't have, let's say, the fastest computer at home where I could open up VB and programs. So in school, when you got in and you saw object-oriented programming, that's all I wanted to do. That's all I wanted to compete with the guys next to me in doing. You know, to this day, I still remember programming the first clock, etc. And, you know, what it does to you in PBC, I had no interest in actually most of the sciences. All I wanted to do was IT and sports. You know, so when I was told, okay, you need to select all your subjects going into Form 3, you know, I had zero interest in the others and I dropped them, you know. But it's interesting how they came back and became effective in my life later on. So I just concentrated on IT. I couldn't be bothered with most of the others listed under STEM, and I concentrated on that and graduated in 2001, went on to TAMCC. Again, I was faced with a new program in IT where they deviated from A levels, your traditional A levels, and focus more on associate degrees. So this was more of a hybrid system that they were introducing to that level of education at the time. I focused on that and left A levels as they were, and then moved on to college from there where I did engineering. Now, where PBC comes in, and this is where STEM becomes important. STEM has been around since the 90s under different names. I think it was a Charles Vetta that actually came up with STEM as the acronym, and in the 90s, late 90s. And it took off from there because various aspects of STEM started benefiting the students. And for me, in the PBC environment, when you look at what STEM is actually focused on delivering, right? And you look at what engineering process is at the end of the day. When you look at STEM, STEM is for teaching students to define, identify, brainstorm, design, prototype, evaluate, iterate, and communicate. Those are basically the fundamentals, and I'm not going to go into each one, but those are the fundamentals that build on STEM. You have many different areas of expertise within STEM, but STEM is focusing on driving students into technology, the different areas within the wide array of technology out there, and it's helping you to collaborate. Now, when you compare what STEM is actually trying to do, and you compare it to an engineering design process in today's modern environment, it reads out exactly the same almost. The words are slightly different, but they are synonymous, really, with engineering process. You look at Six Sigma, stuff like that you see in industry, it reads out almost the same, but just in a simplified form. Define, measure, analyze, improve, control. Now, when you're at the high school level in PBC, they're effectively teaching you to identify, brainstorm, you know, pretty much use your intellect to make your own transactions within life. It's making you self-sufficient. You know, a lot of people think of it as only tech, but really those principles are defining in life. You find them everywhere. You know, today I called Glenn, you know, I made a call to Glenn today just to make sure that we're not stepping on each other's toes when he starts to speak later on. So we had a brief call, you know, and he was in Home Depot, you know, and that came to mind, you know, he probably saw a problem with his piping, and I'm sorry if I'm giving away a personal business here, Glenn, you know, but he saw a problem at home, identified it, and began working on a solution towards that problem, you know, and that these are everyday skills that are needed. So sometimes when we read off to students, this is why it's so important, right? When we read off on STEM to students, and I was talking to a group of Form 4s recently this year, and you know, what I was telling them is sometimes it's not just about the tech, because you have some people that are not, they don't like tech. The tech scares them, literally, a tablet or a computer, or you have millions of people. And let's focus on Grenadians. Many thousands of Grenadians that do not like technology. You know, they like their paper, their pen, etc. And it's so fundamental, just the process. Just think about the process of STEM, that people go through and experience STEM, because STEM has such a wide reaching, effect on your general life. And that goes, when we look at Grenada, as our population grows, as our as our infrastructure evolves, the problems, the environment, the problems become more complex. And if we don't have, this is part of the reason for STEM, right? When you look at the reasons why STEM was brought in and promoted, it was because they realized that jobs, there was such a gap in the amount of people versus the amount of technology jobs and problem solving jobs that were actually available. That's why they're in the United States, they're hiring so many people from India and Grenada and other places in the world. They want us here and not in our home country to solve the problems. Now, when you look at Grenada, we have huge brain drain right now. And the only way, really, when you look at it, to tackle, one of the few ways to tackle brain drain is to increase the amount of people we're actually pumping out with STEM capabilities, right? With people that understand the process of identifying problems and solving them, and our problems are growing in Grenada. Okay, this is a non-political statement, given the environment that we're in. But the fact is, our problems, look at the roads, look at where people are parking their cars, right? I recently was working on a paper independently, from driving there, I got tired of having to stop every moment, and then I'm burning gas every time I accelerate, right? I came from engine development for 8 years. So I have this, this addiction of looking at the amount of fuel I'm consuming, right? And how you're driving. But every time you're stopping on every corner because somebody's needing to park in the road, right? So I started writing the paper, etc. And the first thing I noticed was, we don't have data coming from Grenada. All the data sources were coming from some central point in Latin America, and it was so limited. So again, it goes back to the fact that, we don't have much data collection. We don't have, all these areas within STEM that should be really thriving home, where we could be focused and really thriving, right? As a team, collaborating, scientists, mathematicians, and other areas. The truth is, to STEM, right, is that if we were to drive STEM, we could solve our brain drain. We could start finding ways to bring money in instead of leaking money out, right? Instead of needing investment to drive business, we can create our businesses that are designed to get that money in. There's so many ways, but it starts with your method of thinking and your process, at the basic level. And that changes your mindset. That builds fundamentals in the way you approach your everyday problems. And that's why STEM is so important in so many layers to us in Grenada and to our school as well. Look at the examples you gave with the Alumni Association, identifying the problem, the need, and delivering a building, or whether it's spikes, etc. It's really a mindset and having that process and fundamentals down. So those are things, that's how it's really affected my career path. When I left PBC taught me a number of things, but I'll only name 3 of the many that I took away. Sacrifice was one of them. When I saw the brothers at the time, because part of my time there, Brother Roberts was transitioning out, and Mr. Jeremiah took over. And what I saw from both of them and even the others was sacrifice. I saw a brother that had his family in another country, living by simple means of donations, etc., and yet giving his life to an institution and the students like myself. I saw ultimate sacrifice, because coming in there, I had no idea that, at that level, of sacrifice. So that really stood with me beyond PBC, TAMCC, as you go on to college, etc. It really taught me to sacrifice and worry not about now, but focus on the future, and I think that's what they do at that level, Mr. Jeremiah and others, sacrificing because they know, it's really those sacrifices that you make now have a profound impact on later on. Strength in numbers was too. um, you look at young leaders and these programs that existed during my day. I know there are many more now, and teamwork. I was part of the football team at when I was in the lower forms, and even though I was only getting a short little 15-minute run during those days, because all the older players were the starters, it's still, you saw the teamwork, going up to Mount Rose and beating them 6-0, and then partying because we knew we accomplished something. At the time we were really struggling as a team, but when we came together, talked to each other, trained together, and you go through those rigors, it really taught you a different level of collaboration. And collaboration is such a strong word because, in my career, and I'm sure in many of yours on the call right now, we all have achieved certain levels of success. And when I was at Caterpillar, and we were faced with a really a problem that was affecting so many vehicles at the mines across the world. I was faced with a single problem. Why are our bearings failing? Why are our rods failing in all these vehicles that are down in the mines? You're faced with a question like that, and you can lose your job over it, right? If you get it wrong. But the key thing is that you are never alone. You collaborate with chemists, with mechanical engineers, electrical engineers like yourself. You collaborate with business people, etc., and you get the job done, and you solve complex problems. So really, strength in numbers was one of them. And then finally, the third one that I live with every day is change. As I said, in PBC, teachers were in and out, due to brain drain. People leave all the time to study. So you have new teachers, the curriculum is changing, the principles are changing, the environment in which you are, Grenada is changing. So you see a lot of things. And as a young man, you're growing fast. From the time you get into Form 1, you're a different person in Form 3, and change is something I live with every day. Watching thousands of people get walked out, your friends, colleagues, to dealing with those mental things of watching COVID just wipe out your business. Change is something that you live with, and that's something that I learned at PBC. So, but STEM, I just wanted to say again, reiterate that STEM is really key, not only to technology, but to your life in general. And that's why I tell people all the time, have some form of STEM education within your repertoire. Even if you minor in it, even if you take electables, have it. It is fundamental to the life we live right now. And solving problems is really not just a technology issue, but it's an everyday life issue. So that's one of the key things there. So I think I'm over my time, but thank you, gentlemen.
Very well said.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Campbell, thank you so much. But I would now introduce Mr. John. He was raised by a single widowed mother who is a social worker by profession. Glenn and his sister routinely and frequently accompanied her while she was out in the field visiting and caring for families. Her influence has been instrumental in helping him develop his worldview around putting people first and caring for the disadvantaged, and has helped him remain grounded. He is a dreamer who isn't afraid to pursue those dreams, unlikely as they may seem. Here are some additional fun facts about Glenn. He was born in Satea, St. Patrick, Grenada, to Glenford and Anne John, the second of 2 children, his sister Curlan being the first. He started PBC in 1994 after moving back from Barbados. They lived there for 2 years while his mother pursued higher education at UWI Cayville. And yes, he did his common entrance exam in Barbados. His mother sold their house to cover the cost of his first year of college. They had no idea how they would afford the remaining years. He is a husband to Jennifer, a father to 5, including twin 3-year-old boys. He's an avid reader, lover of everything tech, real estate investing, travel, and sushi. Mr. John has been fortunate to work at some of the most successful tech companies of our era, including Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta, formerly Facebook. He has a dream, and that dream, here is a fun fact, is that he is on track to retire before his 42nd birthday. And here are some fun facts about his time at PBC. The Sports House, he says here, patrician, but I think I'm going to edit out that part where it says the best. Memorable teacher, Mr. Ferran Bascom. Definition of a great teacher, he cared about his students, that he understood the material, but more importantly, cared about the students' welfare. Favorite memories from last to first. At the inaugural Intersecondary School Dramatic Prose Competition, PBC placed last in the qualifying round. He said, we got our act together and placed first in the finals, thanks in large parts to Mr. Jeremiah. The class topic was turtles, and Brother Robert had a bucket of baby turtles that he placed on his desk. The table was bumped and the bucket fell, but he snatched it before it hit the ground. Brother Robert looked at him and said, I could tell you bathed from a bucket, unquote. It was funny because it was actually true. I did bathe from buckets. I could hear Brother Robert say that right now. But Glenn, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bob and the association for inviting me here. It's good to see people just right off the bat. I see some of my my fellow classmates. I see Kareem, Marcel, Carla Clean. I think I saw Singh, Brenja, Alex Singh. People just coming on. So it's good to see some folks who I went to school with. Mr. Bobby also mentioned earlier that, if we share this on our active WhatsApp networks, and it was interesting because we do, our class of 99 has a very active WhatsApp network where we sort of rediscovered from people. And that's the way I get my news primarily in Trinidad, through that chat. So it's been great. But important topic today, we're talking about STEM, and, Mr. Campbell spoke, quite eloquently, and it's just a big +1 to everything he has said. I'll go into that topic too a little bit, but let me quickly just talk briefly about sort of my path. So as Mr. Bob said, I was at PBC, I'm alumni, class of 99, following in my footsteps of Glenford John and my uncle, Livingstone Carib John. So they were there in the 60s and 70s, respectfully, students there. For the last 17 years, I've been in the US now for 22 or so years, the last 17 of which have been in Seattle, Washington, over on the West Coast. And he mentioned I spent some time working at some of the tech companies here in the area, and currently at Facebook, where Meta now for folks, where I lead a team of technical program managers, helping to build the next generation of privacy sort of protecting tools. The thing that I didn't quite highlight, and wasn't highlighted as part of my intro, was sort of the path between PBC and that. Right, so where I am now, and for me, it's a direct line. It's like, I remember the day we were in what was the old computer lab before we got a new computer lab. It was a smaller room on the other side of the hall in the brothers house, and we got introduced to programming. Right, so the teacher came in and he essentially wrote some stuff on the whiteboard and told us copy it into this editor, launch this thing, and it was in QBasic, and you type the stuff and then you run it. And something happens, and the computer sort of spit out "Hello World," right? Was what it said. "Hello World," classic. And it was at that moment, I was 13, and it was at that moment that I decided this was for me, right? So this was before we went across to the new lab about a year later and got into VB and other things. But that was it for me, and there was just this immediate feeling of a little bit of control and experimentation, right? So you could do something, and immediately you see a result, right? And so that just sort of looped me in. So from there, Mr. Nurse, as Mr. Campbell mentioned, was our teacher, and we had a new network at school, new computer network, and he was restricting access to certain things for a variety of reasons. And so he had his bookshelf full of every possible applications, and we had like, as students had one or two or three, and you're like, that led immediately to some problem solving from the student body, right? Like, how do we gain access to all this thing that the teacher has? And so, like, some of the things that Mr. Campbell was talking about around problem solving and around working together to get access and stuff like that. So it's just some really good memories, but all of that sort of reinforced the area that I wanted to be in. Just, it was just a fun thing. But let me stop there and sort of switch a little bit to STEM, right? And really, I see through the lens of a problem. And the problem that we have to solve as PBC, as the Greater Grenadian community, as a Greater Caribbean community, as a world, really is that we live in a world where the rate of advance of technology outpaces most things, right? It outpaces laws that are meant to regulate it. It outpaces the education that you'd get from an institution at a particular time. And so if you think about it, in years gone by, my mother's generation, which is not that far ago, people worked for one company if they could for their whole lives, right? They worked in one company, they did one thing. You look now in the tech industry, it's sort of routine that people change jobs every 5 years, right? So you may work for a different company or even within the same company in a different role, like you change jobs pretty often. And that's expected to continue and potentially accelerate. But to add to that, the real problem is that the jobs that my children, so I have 5 children, but the jobs that my children will be doing and your children and grandchildren will be doing haven't yet been invented. So what we're asking of our educational system, what we're asking of PBC and these other schools is, hey, let us prepare a generation of students for jobs that don't yet exist. We don't know that what it exactly did look like. And so that sounds like an impossible task. How do you prepare people for something that you don't know in the future? And that is exactly, Mr. Campbell said it right, what STEM does, right? At the end of the day, we talk about STEM and it's this buzz, it's science and technology and engineering and math, and it sounds buzzworthy. And honestly, STEM has been around in some form or fashion since like the Enlightenment ages, right? And at its core, what it really is, to me anyway, the way I view it, is it's really a set of tools and frameworks and really a way of thinking that enables problem solving, right? So it's not about necessarily teaching you, what to solve. It's more about the how behind it, right? It's a set of frameworks for how we think about solving problems. And if you think about it, that is the skill set that we need today across all of us and certainly in the next generation to deal with problems that we don't even know will exist, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. We can't teach people to solve problems that don't exist, but we can teach them how they can approach that so they can come to a solution themselves, right? And so, I don't have the specific answers for how we think about integrating STEM even sort of more richly into our curriculums and into sort of how we, shape the future, but I do have some ideas. The thing that I do know, right, is that if we work together, if we are very clear on what our goals are, right, if we have open dialogue and debate, I think we can solve these problems, get to the answers that we seek in terms of how to be better at integrating STEM, how to encourage that sort of growth mindset, that sort of problem solving approaches that STEM encourages. And so in terms of some of my thoughts there's like 4 things that I'm considering and I've been thinking about deeply in this space. One is about encouraging curiosity in our children, right? The S in STEM is science. And science is built on the sort of the notion of the scientific method, right? And the scientific method is always, it's like a loop, and it goes through 7, it could have 7 parts depending on how you look at it. But the first part of it, of the scientific method, is observation and questioning, right? So it's about how do we encourage people to observe what's going on around them? Really, like not just like glance and see and take things for granted, but truly observe. And then question it, right? So the classic example here is Sir Isaac Newton, right? Back in the 1500s or whenever. And he noticed that if you drop something, it fell. Well, I mean, that has been happening for the entirety of human existence. You drop something, it falls. But how many people have not actually questioned that? They just took it as that's the way it is. But he questioned it, right? He took that, he's like, why? Why is that happening? And from that eventually came the theory of gravity and our understanding of one of the sort of physical elements of of our world. And so this notion of really about questioning why, and how do we do that? All right. So let me ask the audience this question. When you're growing up, how many times have you heard, or maybe we tell our own children things like the following? When they ask a question, we say, because I said so, or that's just the way it is, or stop being so inquisitive, or mind your business, or you too fast, right? We've been told that. I've been told that many times. I'm sure I've said it sometimes to my children, right? But that goes against that thing of encouraging curiosity, right? I have young children, they're very curious, so much so sometimes that I want to tell them these things, because it actually takes effort to sit and engage with them and actually have a dialogue and try to explain and help them reason through a why, right? But that's what I want to do. That's what I am trying to do personally with my children, is to help them. My goal, if I'm successful, is to have them be more curious when they're older as they grow than they are now. Children tend to start off curious, and then we sort of beat that out of them as they grow up. But I want to do the opposite with my kids. I want to have them asking why, right? Even if it drives me insane, right? So just think about encouraging curiosity in our educational systems, in our schools, like really, really fostering that mindset, right? Questioning everything. Like nothing should be sacrosanct to the point where people cannot ask why, right? Number two, teaching children how to think rather than how to sort of regurgitate, cram it and regurgitate, right? So thinking about how do we actually learn? How do we analyze facts? Because the only thing that will get us through the future is the ability to have a lifelong continual learning and to be able to analyze things in a methodical and logical way, right? And so now it's really hard in this world. You go online, you're on the TV, put on your TV, it's your favorite news channel, and you have a bunch of figureheads and people telling you what to think, right? And drawing conclusions on your behalf, right? And it's even worse now in this identity politics, right? In the US, you're either Democrat or you're Republican. And put it locally, you're either voting yellow or you're voting green, right? And we don't actually stay back and sort of think about what are the facts? What do I care about? And how do I actually analyze that and say, okay, what is the logical conclusion I can draw, right? How can I get from point A to point B with some sort of a reasoning, right? And so that, that's one thing, that we really have to really think about, how we teach the how. And, if you think about it, we are really focused in our education system often on facts. So what happened in 1492? What was the date of this thing? What was the date of this thing? Tell me what happened. And facts now are a little bit meaningless. And I say that because we have these things, right? We all have these phones. If I want to recall any fact of anything that happened at any time in human history, I could pull it up in seconds on this thing, right? There's little reason for me to actually remember all the facts. What is more important is that I know how to think about the facts, contextualize it, and understand the implications of those facts, right? To one group or timeline. So imagine if tests weren't about regurgitating facts, but were instead about the facts were given to you. So here was the revolution that happened between 1979 and 1983. Now, what I would like to test you on as students is what were the implications of that revolution that happened 40 years ago on current day, modern day Grenada? Can you establish, okay, what happened during the war, the programs that were started? What, are they still running? Are they impacting us in any way? Or are they affecting our society? So it's about encouraging, and you'll hear some crying here. This is one of the 3-year-old twins who is being curious about something, I'm guessing. But how is it that we can actually take facts? How can we give people facts and then have them reason through that and come to a conclusion? So just teaching about how to think. The third thing is problem solving. And I won't say much here because Mr. Campbell hit that left, right, center, up and down, right? At the end of the day, we have to sort of give people the tools for problem solving, right? So you've identified, you've observed something, you're questioning why. Well, how do you come to a conclusion, right? And that's what problem solving is about, right? And so in his job that he mentioned, he's used engineering and math base, right, to sort of come to an ability to experiment and iterate and sort of look at results and try something. And again, if you look at it, engineering and math, sort of math forms a logical basis, and then engineering forms set of principles on top of that, on which we can sort of iterate and come to solutions for the problem solving at the end of the day, right? But as it relates to our schools, if you think about STEM and engineering, it's about, I think, as we look forward, how do we actually partner with businesses, partner students and businesses to form what would be like, or to help solve real problems, right? So how do they take these principles and then actually apply them, even while they're in school? So you can think of it as internships, you can think of it as whatever you want to think about, but like, how do we actually help students realize and really apply that thing in a meaningful way? How do we have our labs in school, right? So I remember in my class, there was a guy, Ron Augustine, and you folks will know, who went to school with me and around me, Ron Augustine. My name is Ron Augustus, actually, yeah. And is what he would say, but he was one of the best learners, I would say, in our year, right? Not from a grade perspective, but a true learner, because he was really interested in the sciences. He was super interested in chemistry. That man booby trapped his bag. So if you tried to touch his bag when he wasn't there, you'd get shocked, right? But he actually took what we learned in physics and chemistry and really understood the principles because he experimented with it. And so how do we encourage that? And by the way, I said you don't need to memorize facts, but the truth is, if you are experimenting and if you are deeply involved and you're analyzing things, you will over time remember the facts that led to those things because it's repetition, right? And so we shouldn't focus first on the facts. I think those will come, memorizing facts. We should focus on how we sort of use those. And so, and then the fourth thing is teaching entrepreneurship, right? So I think in the Caribbean, we are descendants of slaves. And we have a legacy as a result of conformity. We have a legacy of finding security in sort of working for others. So as slaves who were freed, being secure and understanding where your next meal will come from, how you could support your family was critical, right? And so we found a job and we worked that job till we die. Nothing wrong with that. We're all doing it here. Maybe most people are. I know I am, right? To some degree. But there is just another whole world of opportunity where we could start thinking about how do we become the job creators. And to become a job creator, you have to solve a problem, right? You have to observe that there's a problem and that you have to go build a business to solve it. And so how do we encourage that, right? There are things that actually are encouraging that. We have junior achievement in Grenada that I briefly participated in. I don't know if it's still going. But we had these programs, and we should think about what are the programs how we encourage entrepreneurship, right? One for me, my mom, she worked social work for a company, but on the side, she's a photographer. On the side, she bought things to resell things, right? And so how do we actually think about running a business? I will say, maybe she's here or not right now, but she wasn't very successful at running her business because she ran them like charities. So people needed something and they got it regardless of the cost, right? And so that's good for her, but in some ways, how do we actually become more entrepreneurship minded becomes I think another thing that we need to solve. And so, as I sort of wrap up here, we are the state where in Grenada now we can actually be on equal footing with any other people, any other country in the world because of the internet, right? The internet has democratized information, which means any information that is available anywhere in the world, we can get in Grenada. We're not limited anymore by geographical boundaries, right? By having to figure out, I remember I had a set of encyclopedias growing up, the books. But if you think about it, those book of encyclopedias are probably outdated by the time I started to read them. The principles were probably solid, but there's just a ton of new information that was missing from them. But that's not the case anymore. So we are limited only by our imagination and our ambition. And really by seeing things as a zero-sum game, right? So we do this a lot. We think, okay, if my neighbor gets a piece of the pie or a piece of the cake, that means less cake for me, so I'm not helping my neighbor. Instead of thinking about it the other way of how can we work together to make that pie, that cake bigger so we all have more, right? And so if we were to sort of change that mindset of really encouraging curiosity, encouraging problem solving, working together in terms of collaboration, that Mr. Hartwig called out, Mr. Campbell called out there, right? Think about how much we can accomplish, right? And if we in Grenada and at PBC start thinking about how we build these curriculums, how we build these educational environments that are truly grounded in the principles of STEM, which again are about curiosity and problem solving, I think we'll be well on our way to building that road, that road of aspiring, of building, of advancing as one people, right? And as one family. So thank you for listening. These are just my ideas. I encourage you to question them as well. Maybe they're not valid. So thanks. Sabab.
Well said, well said, well said.
Yeah, well said, man.
Beautiful. Started saying, I'm very impressed with the presentation that these gentlemen have made. admirably so, commendable. And it's funny that, like, I was speaking to Mr. Campbell earlier on. I knew his father. Now I know Glenn's father. So I'm an old man in this business, it seems. But the accomplishments of the children, it seems, is outweighing those of the fathers, evidently, which is great, which is great. You guys have done tremendously well. But one question I have, though, with the wealth of information that you guys have and you work with in your careers, have you ever suggested to any educational establishment on the island or even the government and the ministry any of your ideas to better the functioning of the education system in Grenada?
That's a good question. It's a very good question. I have spoken with a few people within the ministry. In fact, my brother currently works within the Ministry of Education, the online learning department. Just from that standpoint, we've exchanged a number of things. I mean, in terms of every time I go home, I ensure that I speak with a group of students. I've spoken with those that are, let's say, rejected within your top level schools and don't make it past, your formal 5 years. Training institutions that will send them to cruise ships or other practical skills. I've spoken with those students, traditional students within that curriculum for CXC, just more focused on trying to instill it in the students, but going as far as pushing it through the ministry to maybe redefine the curriculum and, the way they deliver on the curriculum itself is really a task. One that I have not personally tackled, but towards what Glenn was saying, it's key to actually think about the way that we're delivering the learning. I say that because the reason why in high school, remember I said that I dropped most of the sciences except for the one I loved. And the reason for keeping computer science was because I had the physical lab. We were programming in the lab and enjoying it, right? And learning about the internet and just the wealth of knowledge there. Whereas in the other sciences, a lot of it, because of the lack of availability of resources, was done through theory, especially with math and others, where you look at that. So my love for those that were more highly on the theoretical side quickly dropped off the map. And my focus leaned towards those where I could physically be involved and we had some or more resources to be involved. So I think definitely that conversation can be had, but I think it needs a lot of planning and momentum, or else it will die on delivery. There's a lot of resistance as it is to keeping things the way they are. In order to change things, sometimes you even need a success story. You need a lot of momentum in different areas, and it really needs to be thought over before delivering it to the people that have the capacity to change it. So I haven't done that to that capacity, but I'm ensuring that, I go to the students at least for now. But yeah, Glenn, I don't know. Yeah, if you have a few words there.
Yeah, no, it's about the same, right? I think, it is a daunting task, right? Because we are also, as if you look at our educational system, we're not just Grenada, right? We're looking at it from a Caribbean perspective. And then if you look broader, when we sort of graduate children or students outside of, high school and out of college, into the sort of the systems in the US and Europe, in terms of like educational systems, there are certain things that are expected. And so I think there's a lot of, like to Mr. Campbell's point, a lot of resistance to change, which doesn't mean that we shouldn't go after it, right? That's probably the reason we should go after a little bit harder. So yeah, Mr. Bridgman, I think you raise a good point in terms of how do we actually take it from this conversation here, and like what are the small steps that we can start to take, and it may be, right, we have maybe a little bit more ability to influence PBC, and it's like things that we can do within PBC starting, and maybe that's that proof point that Mr. Campbell is talking about that we can then use and say, hey, look at what we've tried and look at the results, and maybe we want to extend that and make it broader across like the whole system in prenatal. But it's definitely a discussion worth having and some action worth taking here.
I appreciate your attention to it. Thank you.
I'm sure these gentlemen have provoked other thought processes. Any other questions? I know we have some other science people here. Rohan, welcome.
Hey, what's going on, Kelon? Thank you,
Yes.
thank you. I have two questions, but first I want to congratulate the two presenters. My good friend and fellow classmate from 2001, Otway. Excellent. I know we have these conversations ever so often, and it was really clear. Same as we've discussed in the past. Glenn, excellent. I haven't seen you in ages, but congratulations. And I have one very important question for you. How do you get to retire at 42? How early 42?
Oh man. I mean, just that's my goal. I have about 75% of a plan in place. Here's the truth of the matter, right? Like I tell people this. I tell people I work too hard to have to continue working this hard for the rest of my life, right? Right. And so like real estate is one of my loves. Maybe actually my sort of primary love is actually real estate investing. I believe in a notion of building passive income and passive wealth where you don't actually have to work actively day to day. Now, mind you, I should be very clear about what I mean by retirement, right? Like retirement for me isn't about sitting on your bed. I actually worked with one of my previous managers. He had a good retirement story. He retired when he was 39. He was at Microsoft from the time he was 20 till 39, and he retired when he was like 39. And then he joined again when he was like 42. And the reason he joined wasn't a financial reason. The reason he joined was because he didn't have a plan for retirement. So he said he pretty much did everything he wanted to do in 2 years, right? So he took his family, they lived in the south of France for however long, doing whatever. And then he came back and he's like, I didn't have a reason to get out of bed and shower in the morning. And that's when he knew he had a problem, right? And so like, my thing about retirement is really, I have a lot of energy and a lot of personal like beliefs and things that I want to do around early childhood education, particularly in prenatal. And so, I think for me, retirement is about the ability to free up some of that capacity and that bandwidth that you otherwise allocate to a full-time job to really pursue some of those other things that that you really think you can make progress on. So that's my retirement goal, and to spend a lot more time with the family. We have 5 children. But real estate.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Well, let me get to my more important question. So I heard you guys talk about problem solving, and which is something I think that I've recognized in a lot of PBC guys I've known, interacted with, have the same sort of mentality. Less complain, more how do we get this done? How do we figure out ways to solve a particular issue or whatnot, right? So I guess my question, and this is something I've been trying to figure out for a while. I have a son who's in PBC now, and I mean, interacting with his classmates and whatnot. I know these are smart guys, right? These are smart guys, but I think there is a discipline issue that I always feel has to take part in the forefront. You can be smart, you can be good at math in high school and great in TAMCC, but discipline and just bare bones principles, not for some reason. I'm feeling like if there's a fallback on those areas, and I'm not sure how do we improve that in the schools, merging with the ability with curriculum changes in STEM, in improving math, because we have a serious issue in math in this island and maybe in the Caribbean. So it's just always wondered too, this how does the school work with kids, not just to teach them about the facts and the issues and even problem solving, but how do you get them to consistently stay on the course?
So that's an interesting question. Many layers to it, but I'll tackle it this way. So I'll draw back to a story. There was a friend of mine while in Grenada this trip, and he has a young son, just the same way that that goes to GBSS. So I agreed to, talk to him in person. This was at around 8:30. I'm at the south of the island, where we were staying for a while, and they're living in the Belmont area. And I started the conversation with him by talking through WhatsApp on video. And immediately I noticed that his attention was really strained. So I put down the phone and I drove over there in the night, right? I told him I'm on the way there because I needed to talk to him face to face. And the problem, the root of the problem goes back to what you were saying, right? He had interests in some of the topics. He had some of the subjects that he loved, but there was a discipline issue with, remaining focused and actually seeing why you're actually doing all of this in school. Why is it important? He just could not sustain that effort because he's not seeing, he's asking the question to his parents. Why am I doing this? Why are we in school every day? Why am I getting so much homework? I want to go down to the pasture and play cricket. I want to go and play some football with my friends. And you're telling me I need to stay here. And that's one of the challenges in school, right? You don't necessarily see the result of all your work right away. And what I had to tell him was that life can be beautiful, but it can also be extremely harsh. And what your parents are trying to do for you or paint a path, an investment through your education, because that's what education is. What you're doing is effectively investing in your future. You're learning how to concentrate, how to be dedicated, how to make sacrifices, how to sustain yourself, right? And in many cases, kids, we can talk like this now, but in many cases, kids don't see that. It's almost impossible. And this stems from basic things between parents and child, right? When your parents are telling you, you shouldn't go to every party out there, you're going to stay home and you're grounded. You're arguing with them because you're wondering, why are you keeping me from this? Right? And there's a reason for that you can't see right now. And that's the painful lesson that kids go through. So your question stems from, how do you actually let them see that? How do you actually get them in tune? And one of the ways I answer that is the fact that they have access to so much more information. Now it points to what Glenn was saying earlier. We have that cell phone, we have YouTube, etc. One of the things I asked him, he said, I want to be a pilot, right? And what I told him was, okay, you want to be a pilot? That's your dream, sure, right? You're learning math, you're learning all these different things that will help you, because remember, pilots do calculations before takeoff on their weight, etc. They're automating a lot of these things. But you want to be a pilot. Let me ask you, you love YouTube, right? Have you looked at what it takes to fly a plane? No. What do you use YouTube for? I watch my cartoons and my entertainment. I said, if that's what you love, you can use those resources that are available to you. YouTube doesn't have to be just a boring place for you or entertainment place, or a place where you look up how to do your homework. It can also be a place where students can mix in the things they want to do in the future. It can give them a window. It can be that window, because again, remember, they're making the investment now, but the visibility of the results of that investment are hard to see, right? The discipline that you're getting now, it's hard to see why your parents are trying to discipline you or keep you in line. And I'm saying that technology is that glass of transparency that now is allowing us to see, right, what a pilot is doing, what a surgeon is doing, what this person is doing, why you're actually doing all these things, why you actually have to be disciplined and focused. why it takes all of this. And that, Rohan, to answer your question, I'm not saying it's the sole answer, but I'm saying it's an answer that can partially help, paint a light on why things are the way they are and why they have to invest so much time. It's one of the ways you could tackle that. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, I like to add to that. I believe that's true. Like discipline and delayed gratification actually are, really key to sort of long-term success. Really hard to see that as a child, right? Because you're asking them to look out 10, 15, 20 years, from where they are. And so that's a really hard thing. And that's where I think, I think there are a couple of things, right? In addition to what Hathaway is saying here. One is how do we, right? What responsibility do we have as parents, as educators, to help bridge that gap, right? Until they could get there, right? How do we actually, again, make things less theoretical and put it a little bit in practical terms so that they sort of bite off a little bit, right? So, like talking about being a pilot, right? Okay, well, is an experiment I could run where we could actually do small model planes and kind of start doing some of those calculations that incorporate some of those math principles or physics principles, right? So how do you actually make that a real thing? You don't call it math, you don't call it physics, you call it an experiment. Let's go have fun, build a plane, see if we can get it to fly, right? With different weight profiles and whatever. So one is like, how can we be creative? How can we go to YouTube ourselves and see how we could go find those experiments that we do at home and really help them? The other bit, though, I think we also need to look at is sort of the incentive motive for education and teaching in Grenada, right? And in the Caribbean. So I knew when I finished college, so I finished, TAMCC, I had, the traditional thing is you go find a job, right? And even if you want to go to university, you go work for a year and then you go off. And when you go work for a year, it's usually, okay, I'm going to go teach for a year. That's the job path you have open. You're going to teach for a year and then you're going to go off. And the reason we don't have this enduring, so people like Mr. Jeremiah are an exception to the rule. He's been teaching maybe longer than I've been alive. I don't know. But most people are very short, right? You incentivize teaching just for short periods as a stopgap solution until you could figure out how you go to college and how you're going to pay for it. We don't actually make teaching a real profession that people actually incentivize to pursue because number one, the financial, you must, how do we incentivize people to stay? Well, number one, you have to give them the right financial support, both in terms of pay and benefits, but also in terms of the things that they're working with in schools, right? Make sure the right equipment and the right books and the right, labs and all this stuff to set it up. So how do we incentivize that? Because some of the very best teachers are able to get the best out of their students because they really care about the outcomes. They really care about the children learning, right? And so how do we remove some of the things that otherwise would have good people teaching? How do we remove some of the things that prevent them from teaching, I think is another thing. And then how do we, even from an earlier age, so we're talking about secondary school now, from, early childhood education, right? Like we love to say greens, so greens this, greens that, 473. And it strikes me as actually a little bit hollow, meaning it's just a banner we set up and talk about greens, and like we have all this great civil responsibility and civic duty and stuff, and we are patriots and we are but what is backing that? What are the actions that are backing those words and those phrases, right? How do we talk about what does civil responsibility really mean? I know I went to school the whole time and we never really talked about, you talk about history, European history, its intersection with, a little bit of African history, just a touch, and colonization. But we don't talk about what does it mean to be Grenadian? What does it mean to be a Grenadian citizen? What does it mean in terms of the country, your role in it? What does it mean to have a successful country? And we don't actually talk about that. We don't actually instill, I think, a deep sense of pride. Yeah, on Independence Day, we go and we celebrate and we do this and we do that. But what? What does that really mean? How does that factor into our lives deal with it? How do we help? And so I think the more we can sort of instill, even at younger ages, this true sense of civil duty, civic duty and civic responsibility with an understanding that's based in sort of historic context, I think that also helps us to have a common ground from which we could speak, right? And also I think helps paint the picture of this thing happened 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years ago, but it's still impacting us now. So my investment now will also have meaningful impact in the next 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, hopefully. And so I think it's just another part of that puzzle. There's a lot of thing around that, but at the end of the day too, I think as parents, we also have to think of how do we instill even from a young age, it's really hard now with those devices, but how do we actually curtail some of those usages, and how do we actually engage with them a little bit more? I know not just children are addicted to these things, but we are as well, if we're honest with ourselves. And how do we sort of put it on a little bit more and really like take the time to spend the time to do things with our kids that help move them forward? But tough balance, no answers here.
So I have a little bit of a little insight here. So Hatway and Glenn, great presentation. Really dope stuff. You mentioned one thing, Glenn, that I've seen, because I worked a little bit in finance in my time in corporate America, and I think the entrepreneurship and that part into business ownership is a big part of what's missing for us in terms of that comfort in working for somebody for 20, 30 years and then just going home and get a pension, which is, like you said, there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't feel like there's a sense of installation in us, like we can go out there and grow businesses, figure businesses out, meet the needs of our own community. Mm-hmm. And a big part of what I've seen amongst our people, our kind, right here in Brooklyn, is that we're consumers. We consume, we consume, we consume. My car has to be better than yours. My house has to be bigger than yours. And that's the only time we feel like we need to get out of bed, is when we want to have the better car, the bigger house, or something a little bit better than our neighbor. And a lot of my experience in finance was I worked with a lot of Jewish clients. And a lot of the things that I now use in my day-to-day life as a business owner, as somebody who is trying to grow something into the next big thing, is you see that sense of community, that sense of you're a part of something bigger, that thing of let me help my brother, I am my brother's keeper.
Yes.
I would say those are some of the things that I learned while working with a lot of Jewish clients. And people may hear what they say, but sometimes you just have to take the lesson out of all the extras that you hear. And I feel like that's an opportunity for us, especially in Small Isle. I went back home in, I think it was 2017, December. That was my first Christmas in Grenada in probably like 15 years. And I remember I'm in Grenville. I'm on the side of the street, me and my homeboys, drinking a couple of beers. And some kids passed, like maybe no older than 9 or 10, and they're selling little water guns, right? And immediately, that's where my attention went, because I haven't seen that hustle. Now, they're probably hustling out of a sense of necessity, that if they don't do that, they don't eat, or probably they don't, right? They don't have anything else. But we have to start instilling that, even in kids as that young, that sense of, hey, we can go out there. Yo, I love ice cream. Maybe I can sell ice cream. One of my earliest memories from working in banking was one time I'm working with this little Jewish kid. He got some money, I think was for a bar mitzvah or something like that. Or maybe it was for his birthday. And I'm like, what you gonna do? You gonna get an Xbox? Because in my mind, right? He's like, no. I am going to start selling snow cone for the summer. He's going to get an icy machine for the summer. And that was a 10 or 11-year-old Jewish kid at that time. Yes. And I have never been the same since, in terms of like looking at things from a different feel. I feel that that is one of the spaces that we really need to get into in Grenada. And you mentioned it, Glenn, like, you know, instead of us having to bring in the investment, right? We invest inside our own country and let the money come into us, right? There is a lot of opportunity for a lot of different things in Grenada. Ecotourism, just name it. And it doesn't feel like we have the talent or the will even to do that. There's a lot of fruits, a lot of, you know, agriculture, so many local cooks. Everybody know how to cook oil or something, and we're not even trying to market those things as viable businesses, right? But we will bring in money and we'll, build another hotel. And again, this is not political, right? This is just a sense of what I've seen and the inability for us to like just invest in that sense of growing what we have and making it into something. It's just like, I think there's a really big opportunity there for us to do something about it.
Yeah, and that just to add to what you were saying, it's huge. You used a key word, Kareem, when you said we're consumers, right? So I grew up in farming, and one of the things that you tend to see is really to focus on consumption. And something in Grenada that you're starting to see pockets of it, right, through different programs, but understanding your end product and margins, and creating your own business. So not only a farm where you grow some citrus and you go deliver your fruits, but what can you make as an end product, not just the fruit itself? How can you control that product from citrus tree, from planting it to bearing the fruits, to now you can actually process it and make it into an actual product that you can ship, that they can consume elsewhere and bring that money in. So having that sense of entrepreneurship is key, and not relying on foreign investment, but your ideas. It's again, someone mentioned ambition. I think may have been Glenn, but having that ambition to really take it forward and have our own investment, but also you see the word collaboration. They will always ask you, where are we going to get the funding from? We have over 100,000 people in Grenada. We have well over 230,000 people in diaspora, more than on island, right? That can be reached, that can be sourced. We see crowdfunding all the time, and when you look at what it takes to invest in your own people and execute and start utilizing, again, as Glenn said, what the internet has done, it has decentralized that information. It has decentralized the marketplace. So a small business in Grenada could be selling products like soursop, dried soursop leaves on Amazon at a huge markup, and bringing that investment right back to the island. So those are just examples of what we, the mindset. And Rohan, before I change that subject, before I end there, there was something key with the question you had asked about how do we solve that discipline problem. One of the additional ways is actually showing the students the success stories and creating a direct line to professionals that are all over the world. We have Grenadians in every field, finance, music, that have done things at the highest level in the world. Why not have a program where you have a direct line of access to those success stories? Grenadians in many fields are overachievers. When you look at the statistics against us and just our population, we shouldn't have the success in the fields that we have. We really shouldn't. The numbers are against us, to be honest, but yet we do. And when the more you open up that gate, that connection, the more people can learn what it takes and how, and when students see the success stories, their eyes will light up. You see it all the time, and you can change lives, even if it's 5 students, out of hundreds. Those 5 students might be responsible for a future business, $1 billion business that is headquartered in Grenada in the future. Just think about that. So really and truly opening up a program like that, where you have direct access to success stories. People working for the largest firms with resources would go a huge way in motivating those students and telling them, hey, there's a reason. This is the reason why your parents want you to be disciplined, why you should stick to the homework and the programs that are in front of you for CXC. So yeah, maybe it's not changing the program. Maybe it's just adding to it, adding a different branch to it where they can actually see the results of their work, so yeah.
Dr. Nicholas Earl Brathwaite, he's the son of the late former Prime Minister of Grenada, Sir Nicholas Brathwaite, but he's also made his name in the world of entrepreneurship. So Kareem and Dr. Brathwaite, for our next meet and greet for the fall, we are charging you with arranging a meetup in which we'll be discussing entrepreneurship. So Dr. Brathwaite, if you can introduce yourself quickly, please. And I know that you came in late, but I did invite you late as well. So I thank you for joining us. And I know you're a busy man, so I appreciate the time you're taking to come here.
First of all, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to sit in and listen. I've been on for, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes, just listening to the people talk, and it was very interesting conversations. So happy to have had the opportunity and happy to get involved in a future meetup.
Absolutely. If you can just introduce what year you attended PBC, what was your house, who was your favorite teacher?
Yeah, I spent 4 years at PBC. I was actually from Form 1 to Form 4, and then we moved to Guyana. And I see some people on here who I remember from my PBC days. Some of them were ahead of me in school, but there were several people on here that I remember from my PBC days. I was in Aquinian.
And that's a thumbs down. Go ahead.
And my favorite, I was taught by some good teachers. I remember being taught by the late Unison Whiteman, who I thought was a very, very good teacher. I remember Brother Lagori was a good teacher. I was taught by a couple of the politicians too. I was taught by the Prime Minister, and I was taught by Bowen. Prime Minister taught me math in Form 1, I think, and Bowen, I think, taught me physics in Form 1 as well. I believe it was Form 1 or Form 2. But I always credit the education I had in Grenada and in the Caribbean in general, because I went to school in Grenada, in Guyana, and in Barbados. But I always credit the education I had in the Caribbean for the foundation and the love that I developed for science in particular. And I went to school with a lot of really bright people at PBC. I remember, when I went to PBC after Common Entrance, I was, in Common Entrance, I did very well. I think I was one of the top 8 students or something in Common Entrance. And when I went to school, almost everybody that beat me in Common Entrance was in my class. So it was a class of really, really bright people. And that's what I remember, not only in my class. I remember PBC being just a standout place. At the time, some of the top boys coming out of elementary school went to PBC, so the competition was tough.
I don't know if you got disconnected there, Dr. Brathwaite. Were you able to complete your trend of thought?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, all right. Thank you there, Dr. Brathwaite. And Kareem, thank you for your insights. You bring that lived experience from corporate finance as well. And I would now open the floor for any final thoughts that you might have. We want to close the program today, but I would open the floor for any final comments. For those of you who are here for the first time, just a quick introductions. Tell us what year you attended PBC, some fun facts about the school, favorite teacher, favorite memory house. A quick round. I see we have Aaron Alexander here. I don't know this gentleman. Obviously, I think he's probably from the 2000s. Aaron, are you hearing us? All right, Kareem, quickly. I'm not going to assume that everybody knows Kareem. All right, let's go around.
What is required of me? What I got to say?
A quick intro, quick PBC intro.
Kareem, class of 94 into 99. Went there with Glenn. Me and Glenn was in the same class, just like Dr. Brathwaite said. I did pretty well in Common Entrance too, and then I get there and everybody who was ahead of me, I'm in the same class with them. So that was a pretty eye-opening experience for me too. So it was always functioning in a best of the best scenario. And I think like the word says what, iron sharpened iron was one of the things I think that caused us to excel in our roles at Presentation College. I've been in the US for approximately 20 years, worked corporate various companies, and my last gig was at Chase. I left Chase 1 week before the world shut down, and I started my own business. I run a broadcast platform right here in Brooklyn. Pretty much it's Caribbean centric, and have been trying to grow that for the last, I guess I would say 2 years. Been a really scary ride, but one of the most fulfilling things that I've done, just in some of the people that we've been able to reach and some of the effect that we've been able to have on the culture and the community right here in Brooklyn, and to a greater extent, some of the Caribbean pockets around the world. So, you know, when I started this journey, I didn't know there was going to be a lockdown, so to speak, and just even trying to figure out how to get out of that unscathed and still standing 2 years later has been, you know, something that, yeah, it's been one of those things that has been a revelation. But yeah, PBC has been one of the greatest influence on my life, even to this day, in terms of what I learned there, and, you know, the camaraderie and just, you know, the brotherhood coming from there, and coming out here. I felt like I belonged in every room that I stepped in, and it just gave me a lot of confidence to do what I do even to this day. So yeah, that's pretty much my story here.
Thank you. Thank you there, brother. And I'll go around the room. Andrew Bain. Quick PBC introduction.
From 1980 to 1985. And one of my memorable occasions is Sea Scouts and taking a trip from Grenada to Carriacou. And it's just quite an experience, some of the extracurricular activities. And this was a really great program, just resonating some of the things that we heard today: dedication, passion, delayed gratification. And really some great soul.
First ever Corolla Cross. Toyota, let's go places.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Let's go over to Rohan Bernard.
President.
Andrew, yeah, you're breaking up there. The connection is a bit bad. Rohan Bernard, we'll go over to
you.
Hey, I think Andrew's still talking.
Organizing such an event.
Okay, yeah, you were breaking up there. I don't know if it's my internet or yours, but yeah. All right, let's go over to Rohan Bernard. Rohan?
Okay, Rohan Bernard, class of 2001, 96 to 2001. Aquanian House, you know, I think in my 5 years, I think Aquanian won all 5 years in my recollection. So that's always a good stat to show off on, yeah. There's so many fond memories, PBC. Some things you look back on, and at the time you thought it wasn't that great. I remember in Form 1, Arthur would remember this, when the whole class got caned. We even had one of those guys who at the time had a break foot. We were making all sorts of ruckus, and teacher, and I won't call the teacher name at the moment, but tell us all to get out. One by one, 2 lash in. I know they don't do that anymore, but I always found that to be a funny memory from back in the day. Remember, young leaders, we placed first in that year when we did it. We did the Morris Bishop bodies, and that was a amazing experience. We saw how the class came together, and I think at that point, in a way, we went from boys to being men, and sort of took it on from there, the responsibility and understanding the importance of the revolution, which kind of stuck to me even now. Remember the basketball, the nights, the stayovers at PBC. It was, and like Kareem said, PBC remains one of those experiences, even though you passed through different schools, the experiences you had there with the brothers you've met and friends who you've continued to be friends with even after 20 years, that points out how important those connections was at that point. So yeah, that's just a brief point of my time there.
All right, Jonathan. Jonathan, are you hearing us?
Yeah, hearing you. I was just kind of listening in. I wasn't really prepared to talk or anything, but
A quick
Jonathan
introduction. Just the year you graduated, the house.
Yeah. Also from the year of 2001 with Atway and Rohan. I see Atway post that he was going to talk today, so I decided to kind of listen in on that. And great job to Atway and Glenn for chatting. But yeah, I'm in the US now. I'm in Atlanta, yeah, I had I had pretty good memories there in PBC. After I left PBC, I came straight to the United States and started college thereafter. I've been here kind of ever since. That's a little bit about me. PBC, always had fond memories with those guys. Atway, we go back to primary school. We all went to Alpha together, and a few of the other brothers as well. But definitely had a great experience there. I think it laid the foundation for where a lot of us are in our careers and different things like that. So yeah, that's just a bit about me.
All right. Thank you, sir. Alex Singh, followed by Kenroy Dubois. So Alex, Kenroy in that order.
All right, well, I guess a lot of you know me as Bhatendra. I'm also class of 99 with Glenn, Kareem. I was also in Patrician House as Glenn. I remember, I think the first year, Form 1, we did win. I believe we did win sports that year, but I think after that was pretty much all Aquanian. My favorite teacher, I can't really say. One really stands out to me is Hugh Thomas. Mr. Thomas taught us geography in Form 4, and I pretty much carried on, like having an interest for geography, even up till now into my career. I do a lot of funny, the guys are talking about STEM today, and my background is also a really technical background as well. So I do a lot of work with mapping, digital mapping, satellite imagery. Right now I'm working with the hotel, so I do the more of the technical side of it. That's pretty much my current status. But yeah, PBC is, man, I still think about these, in PBC, our class was pretty much one of the smaller classes. I know back in the days, it was only 2 classes of every form every 5 years. I think, how long you guys were the double class around our time. Yeah, with my brother, of course. And yeah, and I mean, just the Caribbean, the camaraderie was just amazing. Some of the fondest memories, I remember even Form 1, where did we went to Trinidad for the leatherback, going to see the leatherback turtles as they lay their eggs. That's with Brother Robert. And we had this fins, fern, and feather fauna, whatever it was called, the little exhibition we had there, all up until young leaders. I think it was the inaugural year that we participated. I think we came second, high school came first. I think so. But yeah, it definitely shaped me. Person who I am is pretty much as a result of PBC, for sure.
All right, Mr. Dubois.
So I was class of 2022, right after Atway class. I was in Greenhouse. I don't remember the name of it. I think it's Dominic. I'm not too sure.
Dominican, man.
Robin?
Dominican. How could you not know?
Dominican. See, it's been quite some time. So yeah. PBC has been a lifesaver. Fun fact, even though I graduated in 2002, I think the year I did CXC, I only got 3 subjects. Mr. Jeremiah was gracious enough to allow me to repeat Form 5, after which I think I did 7 and I got all 7. So in total, I had 10. The experience I learned there, I took with me throughout life. It was a humbling experience, but also a great one. I think I needed that in order to be where I am today. Because of his generosity, as I said, he played a great role in my life, not only as a teacher, but as a mentor. Even to this day, we still speak on the phone. Currently, I was in New York, but then I moved to Virginia, job transfer. I am an analyst for the government. Fun fact about PBC, with the nickname, I'm not going to call it, but I think it started with, I'm not sure, I think it's Kareem class. And then it trickled down after there. And then the one, I don't know if people tell him his face, but that name is synonymous with Mr. Jeremiah. It's fun.
Say beef.
Yeah. Well, that's Kareem beef. I think you guys were the one who started that name, right? I think so, but yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. But I know it's fun. Catching up with all the guys, past and present. As Autry and Mr. Glenn said, PBC has a vast resource. And I think if we were to pull that resource together, the future is bright.
And Aaron, we have Aaron and then Leonard Noel, and then I want to do a special introduction of the people that make the Alumni Association run and function. Leonard Noel and then Mr. Aaron Alexander, if we can get you again. So
did you say Aaron first, or you want me to go?
No, Leonard, you go first.
Okay. Okay, Leonard, everybody knows me as Iggy, 1965 to 1973. I see a few of my classmates on here, Basil, Ken, well, Keith was ahead of me, and Tall Things was ahead of me also. And Cecil Joseph was the cricket captain in 1973. So I said, like I said, 65 to 73, I was in the cadets. I went to 4 camps. Yeah, first one was in Grenada, then I went Jamaica, stayed home the last year, 1 year, and then I went Guyana. I was also part of the, Patrician House. Okay, so let's keep it going. That's why I wear my blue. I make sure I represent. So I played football. I was in track. I played basketball, but in those days we didn't have a basketball team. So I used to play down on the other street. It was a big thing on Saturday night with the Redhead Brothers, and all of us used to police, and all of us used to be. That was the Saturday night thing back in the 70s. I also was a prefect. Before I left, I was a prefect. I remember we won the first inaugural intercall football in 1971. And then in 1972, there was none. And I remember we had a newspaper called The Collegiate. And I wrote an article in there regarding how disappointed we were, because at that time, the powers to be in football were all GBSS boys. And I guess because we beat everybody and were unbeaten the year before, the next year there was no intercall. So I know I kind of expressed my my thoughts on that in the collegiate, as it was called. Brother Ligori was the principal. Then Brother Anthony came. White pants, short pants, white pants. Then we were the first, I think I was in Form 5, we moved to the green pants. That's when in the early 70s, we changed to the green pants and half day school and all day. What else? Like I said, it was good. It was good. I think the foundation that I got from Presentation College has brought me through. I came to Canada in '74. I met Talting. He was ahead of me. He took me up to Seneca College. I graduated in accounting and finance. And then I also played basketball there for 3 years. We won the Ontario Community College Championship. And we went on to the Canadian Championship. We didn't win, but in both championships, Ontario and Canadian, I was named to the All-Star team. So I made my contribution to the team during those years. Again, I have fond memories of Presentation College. I'm looking forward to August and participating in some of the activities. I've already booked and everything, so hope to see some of you guys there.
And thank you so much. Aaron, I don't know if you can hear us or if we're getting a connection to you. But if not,
And I saw Rick. I don't know. Maybe Rick has joined before, but
wait, we have a Rick.
Yeah, Mr. Charles is in here.
Oh,
Yeah.
Rick Charles. Okay, that's Ron Charles's brother. All right. Assuming that that's Ron Charles, I don't want to be presumptuous. Rick Charles, please go ahead and introduce yourself. Glenn, I think you put the man on the spot. Oh, there he is. There he is.
Yeah, man, I was just making a quick pass, you know. They have to just see who in the room.
Yeah.
But yeah, for those of you, I know a few people in here. I don't know everyone. I know Singh or Badendra. I know Glenn. I know Otway, and I know you, Kellon. And the rest, I'm not too sure.
Struggles to come to terms with the total breakdown of his marriage.
Well, go ahead, Rick. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I think Kareem is in there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marcel in there. So yeah, and I know a few people. Class of '99. Yeah, I think I was in when you guys were talking about the houses. I was in Greenhouse. And I was a prefect at some point. I think Glenn and we actually got started as a library prefects, and then that allowed us to automatically become school prefects once we got to, was it Form 4, Glenn? Yeah, it was Form 4, right? Yeah. So we were actually prefects from Form 3, and bro told us we had the same rights as the regular prefects, you know, so that was quite an honor for us being, you know, so young, and we were already school prefects. So yeah, I had a lot of fun in PBC. I think Badendra mentioned the trip to Trinidad where we went to see the leatherback turtles. That was great. And we, you know, a lot of the young leaders stuff, they stand out quite a bit. We did a lot of that. And yeah, definitely shaped me for who I am today. Right now, I'm a systems analyst / software developer. That's my life. Married, I got 2 children, and I currently reside in the US. Yeah, definitely. My brother, you know, passed away 5 years ago. And he was also a prefect at PBC. Did really well. One of the smartest people I've known, and I think a lot of people would say the same. But unfortunately, life just hits us in lots of different ways. So we just got to take it and keep moving, you know.
Again, the PBC Alumni Association, it is a 501c3 registered nonprofit with the federal government for tax purposes. And so one of the things we want to encourage you to do is to give us suggestions with respect to how we can build our capacity. A lot was said here today with respect to what the organization, what we can do as past students to support the work of the institution in continuing to build and to grow. And the institution depends on us as an alumni body, both the alumni body in New York as well as the alumni body in Toronto. The alumni body in New York, as I said, is an extension of the United States of America. So it's not only because you're in New York that you're restricted to serving on the organization. We encourage all past students in North America to come on board with us and to support our work. Now, you do not have to attend every meeting. We do have meetings every first Friday of the month. I believe Glenn and Hartway made the point that the internet has democratized how we are able to connect, how we are able to build, and how we are able to grow. And so we will be using this platform as a capacity building tool. And what can you do to help? Of course, as I said before, as Elaine articulated, you can donate to our Zelle account that is listed in the chat. In addition to on our website, pbcalumni.org/donate. For those of you who are on social media, we do have a Facebook page, in addition to a Twitter account. And so you can find all of those accounts for regular updates with respect to the work that we do. The work that we do is an extension of how you can also contribute. And that is very important for us. But at this time, I want to introduce these very special and important people as we close this evening's proceedings. Mr. Elaine Alexander, who you heard from earlier, Mr. Ken Phillip, Mr. Wilton Thomas, who will be delivering the vote of thanks shortly, Mr. Ken Lewis, Mr. Basil Gahagan, Mr. Cecil Joseph, Mr. Andrew Bain. If I'm leaving out anyone, am I leaving out anyone, folks? Keith Bridgman, Brother Keith Bridgman. Brother Keith Bridgman. These gentlemen and a lady who is not here, that is Valerie Blackburn Johnson, who is the vice president of the association. I serve as your humble servant as the president of the association. And we really try to assist PBC in whatever way we can. And we're also counting on you now to come on board with us in whatever capacity. You don't have to attend any meetings. But the final call to action, Eric Holder, thank you there, Eric Holder as well. The final call to action is if you gentlemen can drop your email addresses in the chat so that we can keep in touch with you, if that's okay, your email addresses and phone numbers, so that you can be kept abreast of the activities that we engage in. As I said, the scholarship fund, we have donated close to $25,000 US so far, and that goes to help Presentation College students who are in need. And so we encourage you to support that kind of work. So Wilton, over to you.
Thanks, Shalon. Today was a very enlightening experience. It's a TED Talk that we didn't have to pay for. Glenn, I haven't seen you in forever. Mr. Hatchway, I don't know, I think you were in my cousin's class, Andre, I want to believe. On behalf of the PBCAA of New York Association, the president, its members, the entire PBC fraternity, it's a heartfelt thank you I want to extend to both of you for your presentations today. The themes, the topics you presented on, you touched on, was very, not just enlightening, it was forward thinking. It's the type of conversation and discussions I think we need as not just as an association or as a high school, but indeed probably even on the level of a country. This was very, like I said, people pay for these type of conversation, big money too, and the level of delivery, the conciseness, the level of thought that went into your presentations today, just made me proud as a PBC student, made me proud, seeing you guys, remembering Glenn, little Glenn running around in PBC, and now Glenn is talking about retiring at 42. It's almost mind-boggling, and it's there's pride in that as well. So on behalf of the Association in New York, I want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We really appreciate it. I want to also encourage not just both of you, but all our guests here today to stay engaged with us. It was mentioned during the talk a couple of times that, class of 99 have a very active WhatsApp group. So does my class of 1996. And I suspect there are other classes that have very active WhatsApp group. But as a challenge that we have faced as an association is filtering alumni into the association, into the idea. I think we touched on it, or I'm not sure if it was Glenn, you touched on proof points, creating a sort of individual, Mr. Campbell, okay, creating a sort of individual, a universe where we target our own. And we have a wealth of expertise, a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of skill within the PBC body, both back at Capitol, home, and in the diaspora. And we just haven't, in my mind, figured out how to tap into that in a sustainable, successful manner. And I think events like this are examples of what we need to do to bear fruit, right? So Glenn and Mr. Campbell, thank you again. And hopefully we could tap into this. We could bring our classmates into the fold, get them to join, get them to, like Kellen says, folks don't have to come to every meeting, but I still encourage it, but be accessible. When there's events, when there's programs, when there's activities, be available, be accessible, so we could grow not just PBC, but help to advance the causes that we are trying to advance back home for Grenada, ultimately. So once again, I want to thank you very much on behalf of the association, its president, its members, for this presentation today. And I hope today is not the last. I hope this is the beginning of an existing viable outcome, our existing viable plan, our existing viable way forward, not just for the association, for PBC, and then ultimately Grenada as a whole. So thank you very much.
All right, Wilton, thank you so much for that vote of thanks. And thank you all. Thank you all for taking the time. Glenn, I know that you are on the West Coast, and I know that there was a time difference there. Hotway, I'm not too sure if are you on the West Coast as well?
Oh, no, I'm central.
You're central, okay.
1 hour behind,
so,
yeah.
So we have some folks who are coming in from different time zones, but we certainly want to thank all of you for participating today. And on behalf of the executive and our team of spirited volunteers, we want to thank you all.